Hello, everyone. Today we're doing lesson 13, A Meaningless World Engenders Fear. And we will be doing chapter 2's The Separation in the Atonement, and it's section 3, The Altar of God, that we will be doing today. So let's begin. Section 3, The Altar of God. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. Since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement and thus maintain the separation. This is generally seen as a need to protect the body. The many body fantasies in which minds engage arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement. Perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion, because it alters only part of it. It does recognize that atonement in physical terms is impossible. The next step, however, is to realize that a temple is not a structure at all. Its true holiness lies at the inner altar around which the structure is built. The emphasis on beautiful structures is a sign of the fear of atonement and an unwillingness to reach the altar itself. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. Spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. For perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the altar, of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind. Before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear, because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear are miscreations that must be undone for the restoration of the temple, and for the opening of the altar to receive the atonement. This heals the separation by placing within you the one effective defense against all separation thoughts and making you perfectly invulnerable. The acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. This may appear to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision, but this is not so. You can temporize and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your Creator, who set the limits on your ability to miscreate. An imprisoned will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Okay, I need to interject something here. I can speak from extreme experience about this. Growing up, like most folks out there, I would eat all kinds of stuff that I was given as a kid. Didn't think nothing of it. I would eat pork, bacon, pork chops, pork loin, all that good stuff, right? And as a kid, I would get these migraines, these horrible headaches, and I never understood why. Folks didn't understand why. And because of that, I grew up continuously eating pork, not getting any connection, because it was when I was eating that pork that I would get the headaches. There's other things too, like Kool-Aid. I was allergic to food coloring. And nobody understood that. I realized that. So that was something that I had to figure out on my own, and I didn't figure that out until about 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago. Right after I had a motorcycle accident that really had me looking at my life, really looking at everything that I was taking into my body. Because at that time in my life, I reached a point where I had reached my end, where I was ready to check out. I'd broken my left arm, my left ankle. I was bedridden and in a wheelchair for a long time. I was told I'd never walk again unaided. I was informed I had 2 forms of cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, along with the migraines I was continuously suffering from every single day. And then I started bleeding continuously on top of that, having my menses continuously for over a year. Needless to say, my body was falling apart. So I had reached my end. I was like, okay, they have me on 14 pills 4 times a day. I'm done. I'm going to take all these pills and all these bottles all at once and check out. And I had a conversation with God in my kitchen that day saying, I'm done. Either you show me how the hell to get out of this crap I'm in without wading through bullshit, or I'm checking out. And that day, I heard a voice. I heard a voice telling me to start paying attention to what I took into my body and to how my body reacted, to connect those dots. And as I did so, I found that certain things I reacted to, certain things I didn't. I started paying closer attention to how my body reacted. That was the first step for me, was to pay attention to how my body reacted. And this was like 10, 11 years ago, before I ever found this course. And let me tell you, my relationship was falling apart. My life was falling apart. It was right before that big bubble hit. So I was getting done with my life. And needless to say, when I reached that point, I had reached the end of my tolerance for pain and suffering. I had reached the bottom of my barrel. And that's what seems to drive a lot of folks to find another way. And it leads them to places like this course. You don't want to suffer the pain anymore. And that's why we're here. This is telling us that we need to change something. And it's the way we look at ourselves, the things we think, the things we believe, because we project out what we believe on the world. And that is what we keep doing. Whatever we believe about ourselves, we project out there. Continuing on. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the 2 levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute. But the outcome is as certain as God. Spiritual vision usually cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All solutions the physical eye seeks dissolve. Spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into its service. This reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would at once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. Interjecting again here, folks. This past weekend, as I was sharing about the things going on with my family and how my body was reacting and whatnot, this here is a direct correlation to what I was talking about there, about how it was all connected. Because as I have gone within and cleared out my misperceptions of the judgments and lies I was taught to believe in clearing those out and seeing the truth of what I did to myself in believing in those judgments and lies and enacting them on myself every single day, when I, in that moment in that wheelchair, turned to Holy Spirit, I turned myself over to him fully that day. And believe me, at that time, I hated God. I could not stand him. I blamed him for all the rapes, molestations, beatings, all the abuses I had suffered all my entire life. And I was studying Wicca in between the age of 14 on up through until until I was 41. I had been doing that. I'd been studying Wicca. I had also studied a lot of other religions too, went and tried them all out, and I found one thing in common. They all had similar things going on, but they all had a twist, that they were the one and the only. And they judged everyone else as being wrong, incorrect, and bad, and going to hell or whatever. And that just didn't set right with me. I could feel the truth in some of them, with some of the things, but a lot of it just felt wrong. And as those truths and realizations came to me, I had to step back from all of those religions. And I found myself going toward the druidistic, shamanistic path, which is going back to nature and becoming one with the earth. And then from there, when I found the Course, one thing led to another, and God has come back to me fully. And in so doing, me giving over and giving myself over to Holy Spirit that day to take control, I've been able to see the things I've done as I laid in that bed, unable to move after that accident. I had to sit there and look at everything that defined me, because every single thing I thought defined me, I was having to hand over to somebody else. Someone else was coming in and cooking for my family, taking care of my son, taking care of my husband, taking care of my business, taking care of me. I couldn't even wipe my own ass. They had to do that for me. I mean, seriously. I had to redefine everything that I had to look at everything I was defining as myself, that I thought I was. And that was a harsh, eye-opening reality, to have to go through that, to look at every single thing in one fell swoop. And that is what he had me doing. And let me tell you, since then, I have been looking at everything, and he keeps saying, connect the dots. Everything's connected. Our thoughts to our emotions to our body. Just like the foods we eat affect our body. Everything we take in affects us. Even those judgments, those opinions. Just like I was saying with my family, they affected me. because I was taking them in and I had a measure of belief in them. And that was my mistake. I doubted myself in those moments. Continuing on, I'm going to probably come back a few lines to bring us back together. At number 4 in paragraph 4, sentence 4. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into its service. This reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. The children of God are entitled to the perfect comfort that comes from perfect trust. Until they achieve this, they waste themselves in their true creative powers on useless attempts to make themselves more comfortable by inappropriate means. But the real means are already provided and do not involve any effort at all on their part. The atonement is the only gift that is worthy of being offered at the altar of God because of the value of the altar itself. It was created perfect and is entirely worthy of receiving perfection. God and his creations are completely dependent on each other. He depends on them because he created them perfect. He gave them his peace so they could not be shaken and could not be deceived. Whenever you are afraid, you are deceived, and your mind cannot serve the Holy Spirit. This starves you by denying you your daily bread. God is lonely without his sons, and they are lonely without him. They must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. The atonement is the guarantee that they will ultimately succeed. All right, that was section 3 in chapter 2 in the separation and the atonement, section 3, the altar of God. And I want to say something here about, this altar that it's talking about. My understanding that I've been given from Holy Spirit is that, as you'll find out as the further we go in this course, in these lessons, the mind is, and the thoughts and such attached to the mind are considered to be egoic thoughts. And in that context, what I have been shown by Holy Spirit is that the mind is ego, and the thoughts, the fears, a lot of those things come up from the thoughts coming up in the mind. And so those are all egoic thoughts. Anything to do with fear is an egoic thought. And that Holy Spirit comes from the heart. You feel him here in the center of your chest. It's a warm expansion, like you are just opening up. And he will always come to you truly from that space. And when I listen to that feeling, that physical feeling, and I can feel it, and sometimes I even feel it here in my third eye and in my crown and right up here as I'm focusing in on what it is I'm perceiving coming in my body as whatever around me is happening. I perceive what's going on out there, and then inside I'm asking Holy Spirit, what's happening? Holy Spirit is here in your altar. Your altar is here in your heart chakra, with your soul, with your spirit, here in the center of your being. It's not your body. Your body is just one of the most magnificent tools you have. It gives you clues into what it is that you are thinking, feeling, and experiencing. It gives you warnings. It says, hey, guilt, you got something to look at here. Don't just pass it over. Look at this. If it's engendering conflict within you, pain, hurt, anger, the hurtful thoughts, the negative, angry thoughts, all those things, look at them. Look at them with him. He'll show you what they're about. And trust him to show you. But you got to ask him to look first. So that's what I want to bring to the attention, is that the altar is here in the center. It is in the center of your being, in your heart chakra. That's where Holy Spirit rests with you. He speaks to you from within, always from within. All right, moving on to the lesson of the day, which is lesson 13. A meaningless world engenders fear. Today is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. Recognition of the meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. It represents a situation in which God and the ego here, challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space that meaninglessness provides. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own impotence and unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaninglessness and accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes that it does not possess and crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. And interjecting here, that is absolutely true. At this moment in time, we equate ourselves with our ego minds, with our thoughts, our judgments, our opinions. Oh, please, look at her wearing them funky old boots. Oh, please. You know, getting that nasty attitude, judging. I could have made this so much better. I know exactly what this needed to just give it that perfect kick. You know what I'm talking about, people. You know. We all have those moments where we think we know better, we know what's best. That snide little voice in the back of our heads. That is that ego voice I'm talking about. And it's that same voice that tells you, oh, you are wrong. Oh, girl, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should have never went there. You should have never, oh, don't eat that. Don't you think you're fat enough already? See, things like that. That's what the ego mind says to us. Because that's what we hear from everyone around us. It must be true. It's a lie. It's a judgment. It's an opinion. No more, no less. And it's those things we're learning to let go of. Recognize that. Continuing on. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at most each time, are to be practiced in a somewhat different way from the preceding ones. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. Then open your eyes and look about you slowly, saying, I am looking at a meaningless world. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about. Then close your eyes and conclude with, A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point and will probably dismiss it as preposterous. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear which it may arouse. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and try not even to think of it except during the practice periods. That will suffice at the present, or at present. And that, folks, was lesson 13 in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. A meaningless world engenders fear. And this is what I've been talking about since the start, about how our thoughts depict what we see. Our thoughts truly depict what it is we see out there in the world, because our thoughts are based off of our judgments and opinions, our fears, our guilt, our shames, our angers, our pains, our anguish, all of it. We project all of these things out. And as we do that, what we see out there is absolutely meaningless, because it's only has the meaning we're giving to it in that moment. And when you are looking at this stuff and really taking note, you will feel conflict inside. You will feel hesitancy to believe it. And let me tell you, I went through it. I can tell you. I was like, oh, this is just bullshit. No way. This is crap. And the more I did it, excuse us, we got somebody making lots of noise outside, and our dog is letting us know. Okay, so as I was saying, in all of it, we have to look at what it is we are truly thinking in that moment. What judgment is there? What opinion is coming up? What fear? What guilt? What shame? Excuse my dog, Thor. Somebody's making lots of noise out there, and it's exciting him. Did you hear that? Somebody's rolling a trash can out there. So everything's connected. Connect the dots. You know, it's telling you right here, all of it is connected. And when you look and note carefully the overt and the covert fear which it may arouse, recognize it's there and ask yourself, what is this? Why is it here? And in doing that, you find yourselves looking deeper within. You know, I've mentioned it before, Holy Spirit has referred to each step, each thought I take into consideration with Him. When they come to me, each thought, each memory, it is a step into the labyrinth of my own mind to undo everything I've been taught. And once I can get to the center of that labyrinth, to the true being that's there, without all the other garbage blocking me anymore, I will know who I truly am at that point. Then I will see my brothers as they truly are, with no deception. no doubts, no fears. And that's what these lessons are leading us to, is that kind of understanding of who we are, what we're capable of. That was lesson 13 in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. A meaningless world engenders fear. And section 3 of chapter 2, the separation and the atonement, section 3, the altar of God. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Sabrina Reyenga with Alex behind the cameras. And as you found out yesterday, we do run multiple cameras in case we get things messing up. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.